All right, so welcome. If you don't know me, my name is Megan Rowe. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also the manager at St. Jude Wellness Center. If you have not come to the Wellness Center, please come. We have lots of fun fitness stuff. We have cooking classes in person. Those are very limited in number. I think we have 180 people registered for this one today. Our in-person cooking classes are capped out at 15. But they are a lot of fun. You can actually taste the food. We have dietitian consults. We have another dietitian. Her name is Lisa. She's wonderful. She has a background in diabetes and heart health. So we have a lot of good stuff, medical fitness, massage therapy. We just got an esthetician for facials and skin therapy. So we have a lot going on. Would love to see you in person, but I love that you are here virtually as well. So we're going to cook a lot. I don't know how many of you are cooking alongside with me today or how many are just watching. Hopefully a little bit of both, or maybe you're planning on making this after you've seen me do it. But we have a lot to cook today because I did create some bonus recipes as a huge thank you for your patience. I know it is so frustrating when a class that you were planning on gets canceled, and I hated doing that last week, but I appreciated all your kind words. My kids are finally better. It took about 6 weeks, or not 6 weeks. That would be horrible. It took 6 days. So there's no way we could have had a cooking class with them in the background being sick. So here we are. Our topic today is blood sugar management with food. And what I love about this topic is it kind of addresses every other health concern. If you're addressing your blood sugar needs, you are addressing inflammation, underlying inflammation of any kind. You are addressing thyroid concerns. You are often addressing cardiac issues and cholesterol. You're often addressing digestion. So it's kind of this nice overarching umbrella way of thinking about cooking if you're just thinking about how do I manage my blood sugars as I am eating. So you do not have to have diabetes. You don't even have to have technically high blood sugars ever to be thinking of cooking in a way to manage your blood sugar. So when we're thinking about blood sugar, we should be thinking fiber. High fiber foods have a lower glycemic index, meaning they don't increase your blood sugar as much. So something like a kiwi, let's say, that doesn't have a whole lot of crunch, it's a good source of fiber for as far as fruit goes. But versus something like a cucumber or a celery that you're like really crunching and biting through, that has a lot more fiber. So that's going to have a lower glycemic response. Not to say kiwi is not healthy. It is, but it's just to kind of give you a comparison of two different ways of thinking about fiber. So the more fiber you have, the better your blood sugar is going to be per meal, per snack. The other thing you should be thinking about is protein and fat. Protein and fat slow down our digestion and our absorption. So when we are eating a carbohydrate, that's going to increase our blood sugar. That's what it's supposed to do. It's not a bad thing. Carbs are not bad. But when we just have a handful of grapes, let's say, versus having that handful of grapes alongside string cheese or alongside some nuts, some protein, some fat, it's going to slow down the absorption of that sugar from that grape and help to maintain consistent blood sugars instead of a spike. So protein, fat, fiber. We should also be thinking about our digestion of those foods. If a food is getting you really bloated after a meal or a snack, you're like, I need to get my Thanksgiving pants on consistently, or you're just kind of uncomfortable feeling, that is a signal that your digestion is not happy, is not healthy. There's an inflammatory response going on, and that's going to shoot up your blood sugars. Finally, we should also be thinking about our stress levels during eating, before eating, after eating, because if you're in fight or flight stress mode, your body is not going to digest those foods and you're going to have a high blood sugar response, even if it's a fairly low glycemic meal. Stress plays a huge part of that. So we're going to kind of walk through all those main topics by looking at ingredients and combinations today that can help to keep blood sugar down. First recipe, so if you're cooking with me, pull it out, the Thai crunch salad. Okay, so this is actually a copycat. If you ever went to California Pizza Kitchen and got their Thai crunch salad, it's so good. But their dressing is really high sugar. They use a lot of like crunchy, crispy things that are made of bread and refined flours that really lead to a pretty high blood sugar spike. And there's not a lot of fiber, surprisingly, even though it's a salad in that one, because it's some cabbage and some greens and carrots. But then you have all of these other kind of lower fiber foods in addition to that high sugar dressing. So we remade it so that it's still delicious, still yummy. I think it's honestly quite a lot easier to prepare than theirs is. and it's going to give you a better blood sugar response. So first we're going to make our sauce or our dressing. It's a peanut sauce dressing. So you're going to start with peanut butter. First thing on your peanut butter, read the ingredients, turn that bad boy over. What do you see? Do you just see peanuts? Because it should only be processed, ground down peanuts. There should be no sugar. There should be no oil. You shouldn't see palm oil on your peanut butter. Maybe salt. If it's salted, I'm less concerned about that, but there should be nothing but the actual nut. If you have an allergy to nuts, possibly you don't do well with legumes or with lectins, then maybe you're using almond butter. Maybe you're using tahini instead, which is sesame seed butter. You can replace any of those. It's just not going to have quite that peanutty flavor, obviously, because it's not peanut butter. But you can totally replace this with another type of nut or seed butter, and you're still going to get a creamy, kind of yummy Asian vibe. All right, peanut butter only, or peanuts only. Also, by the way, I bought this at Mother's. I can't tell you how long I sat in that peanut butter aisle looking at every single peanut butter, organic, natural, and all of them either had a sugar or had a palm oil added to it. It's very, very common. So don't think just because it says natural on the front or organic on the front that there aren't a bunch of other things added in. You just want peanuts, or you just want the nut. Okay, so the recipe that I gave you serves 2. I'm just making myself lunch today, so I'm just gonna do enough to serve 1, but I'm still gonna follow the exact recipe for the dressing, because you can never have too much peanut sauce. Always, always in the background, have peanut sauce. Double, quadruple this recipe and have it in your fridge, especially if you have kids. It is an awesome tool to have, because you're like, I over grilled the chicken. It's a little tough. Dip it in some peanut sauce. This is so good. So definitely highlight this recipe. So the recipe calls for, excuse me, a 1/4 cup of creamy, natural, unsweetened peanut butter. I'm eyeballing it because I've made this enough times. And it's okay to eyeball this. If it's not quite a 1/4 cup, a little more, a little less. You can always add the other ingredients and kind of mess with it and jazz it up. All right, that's about a 1/4 cup. You can use crunchy if you wanted to. It's just you're gonna have a crunchy or a Thai crunch salad. All right, the reason I like peanut butter or any type of nut butter from a blood sugar perspective is that it's high in protein and it's high in healthy natural fats. So you're getting a really good blood sugar control combination in just this ingredient alone, which is really, really nice. We're going to add some garlic powder. You could add fresh garlic too if you wanted. Garlic powder is easier. We're going to add rice vinegar, 1 tablespoon. If you don't have any rice vinegar, you could use kind of whatever light vinegar you wanted, white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. I love the flavor of rice vinegar. It's just got a very different bite and taste to it than the other vinegars, especially when you're going for kind of an Asian flavor profile. We're going to do soy sauce. Now, if you're intolerant to soy, soy allergic, you just don't like soy very much, 1 tablespoon. You could use coconut aminos here, or tamari sauce. I tend to kind of rotate around between whatever is at the store, whatever I feel like buying, whatever is cheaper. This happens to be soy sauce right now because we were at an Asian market when I needed it. I typically, though, I'm leaning more toward tamari because tamari has no wheat in it at all. It's just soy sauce. Soy sauce has wheat and soy in it. So I'm always trying to look for ways to get rid of anything I don't need, and soy sauce doesn't need to have wheat in it, but that's what I have right now. We're also going to add some sesame oil, a teaspoon. This is like the coolest little multi-purpose serving measuring spoon. It's got a teaspoon, a half teaspoon, a tablespoon, and like half a tablespoon. Dripped on myself. Sesame oil is an oil that cooks really well with high heat. It also has a pretty nice nutrition profile as far as some saturated, some unsaturated. But it is hard to find cold pressed, and you do typically want cold pressed oils from an inflammatory perspective. So if you can't find cold pressed, kind of lean on not using it as much in your cooking, more for flavoring. 1 teaspoon here and there isn't going to do much. And then we're going to do lime juice, the juice of 1/2 to 1 lime, depending on how juicy and limey flavored you like your dressing. And if you have a cool tool like this and you can really squeeze out a bunch of lime, you might not need a whole lime. I just needed a half. So what have I done here? I've added a bunch of flavor. Okay, there's not much blood sugar wise that goes on here, but I have added a little bit more fat, and I added some acid with the rice vinegar and with the lime juice. Acid helps us to digest things. I know for those of us with reflux, that seems backwards. We've always been told, no, don't have any acid. But the problem is when we have acid and we already have that reflux happening, that's when it triggers it. But if we can kind of continually throughout the day supply little bits of acid to our body, especially before we eat, it can actually help us to digest our foods better. And when we're digesting foods better, we have better blood sugars. So anytime there's acid involved in a meal, we see better blood sugar outcomes. So we have lime juice, we have rice vinegar, and we're just gonna stir, stir, stir. Now your recipe calls for red pepper flakes as well. That's optional. I personally don't love mine spicy, but that is kind of the original recipe. All right, so this is a nice, thick, almost kind of dip sauce. Like if you were making like spring rolls or something, you could stop right there. But because ours is gonna be a salad dressing, I'm gonna add some water, about 1/4 cup-ish of water. And you don't want it to be cold water because it'll kind of harden up the peanut butter. So, and you just add it until it's the thickness that you like it. And then you taste too. So if it starts to be the thickness you like, give it a taste before you add more water, because maybe it needs more soy sauce. Maybe it needs a little bit more rice vinegar. And so you could thin it out that way too. Like I think mine needs a little bit of both, actually. A little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of rice vinegar. Now know that if you're making a big batch of this ahead of time, it'll thicken up in the refrigerator as peanut butter does. So you'll need to add some more water or some more liquid kind of each time you're going to use it if you pull it out of the fridge. Or you could just make a fresh batch every time, because as you can see, it's really not that difficult. All right, I'm going to set my sauce aside. So already, before I've even touched my salad, I have a healthy dressing profile. I have protein. I have good sources of fat that are not inflammatory. I have acid that's going to help me digest things. So already, right here, this is better off than a high sugar, inflammatory oil dressing sauce that you're going to get from eating out somewhere. Okay, so this right here is a good choice. And again, like I said, it's so tasty. Now you're going to make the salad part. And you can see how quick and easy this is if you're someone who works from home, doesn't work in our home, how quick this can come together. I'm blabbing away at you, so I probably could have made this entire salad already by now. But it's really simple to put this whole thing together and to double or triple or quadruple the recipe and serve this to a bunch of people. So your recipe only calls for cabbage. I kind of like it with a little bit of mixture of cabbage and greens. I just prefer that. I don't want a whole bowl full of cabbage. So I have green cabbage and I have arugula. Now, these are the fiber piece of things. Think of chewing on raw cabbage, on raw arugula. How you're really grinding your teeth on those, right? That is fiber. So that is helping your body to slow down digestion. It's helping tell your body to create waste, aka poop, so that you're not absorbing everything and you get it out of your body. It's slowing the increase of blood sugar in your system with whatever you happen to eat around it. So eating a small bowl of really crunchy greens of any kind before you have a meal is a really good trick. So especially if you know you're going to have something like pizza or pasta, you know, that you know that's going to spike your blood sugar, have a cup or two of really crunchy greens, maybe with a little olive oil and vinegar dressing, before you eat that high carb meal. And I guarantee you, you will have less of a blood sugar spike than you would have otherwise. And if you're someone who monitors your blood sugar, you're wearing a CGM of some kind, you'll see that difference of a high carb meal versus a high carb meal with fiber beforehand. So it's a really good kind of kitchen hack to have your fiber before your meal. From an inflammatory perspective, cabbage and arugula are both very bitter. And it's a good kind of mantra, the bitter, the better. The more bitter a vegetable is, the healthier it is for your immune system, because that bitter flavor is that plant's protection. And it means it's a very healthy plant protecting itself. So that is now giving those beneficial protection properties to your immune system. So we really want lots of good, bitter, crunchy greens as a salad base. And now we just kind of add on and make it beautiful. So I have some bell pepper. Your recipe calls for red and orange, I think, or red and yellow. It doesn't matter. It just makes it pretty if you have two different colors. I happen to only have red. Bell peppers are an incredible source of vitamin C, which help our immune system function. But again, you're getting from a blood sugar perspective, you're getting a whole lot more fiber here. We're also going to, your recipe calls for shredded carrots. I had cooked carrots. So you're seeing also how we can modify things. Are carrots super high in fiber when they're cooked? Not really. Are they a higher glycemic vegetable than something like a celery or a cucumber? You betcha. Does that mean you can't eat them? Absolutely not. This is one of the most common questions I get when people come into my office and ask me about blood sugar management is they'll tell me they had a sandwich and a bagel and pizza, but they're like, oh, but I don't eat carrots. Don't worry. You can eat carrots. Carrots are so good for you. They're high in fiber. They're high in lots of nutrients. They are still a vegetable. They are technically a higher glycemic vegetable. So if you have a carrot versus the celery and you're watching your blood sugar, you're going to have more of an increase from carrot. Are you going to have a spike like you would from bread or ice cream? Absolutely not. And when you cook a carrot, you also increase its glycemic index a little bit. But again, we're looking at this balance. So I have a slightly higher glycemic vegetable here. It's giving me a little bit of carbohydrate. I'm going to see some increase. But I have all this other raw fiber and all this protein and fat that I'm balancing it out with. I don't really have to worry about something like a carrot. Okay, so please eat your carrots, even if you have full-on diabetes. It's okay. We're going to do some shredded chicken. So here's our protein. Use any protein you want. If you don't like chicken, use cooked shrimp. Do leftover flank steak from last night. Do some sauteed ground beef. Use any protein you want, but add protein in 1/4 to a 1/2 cup serving, depending on your needs. So I happen to just have some leftover chicken from, we had tacos last night. So this is a great idea for using up your leftovers. If you have this much chicken leftover or just like a little 1/4 cup of shrimp leftover, don't throw that away. You could throw that into a salad and add some more protein in the dressing by adding in some nuts and seeds on top. You can always mix and match, and lunch is just such a great way to utilize those leftovers and not have to overthink and cook at every meal. So I have my protein. I'm going to balance out my blood sugars with that, and I'm going to toss it with my dressing, which is thickened up a little bit. I want it a little bit thinner. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of drizzle on, keeping in mind that, remember, I followed the recipe. So this is a 2-serving dressing. Honestly, it's probably more like 3 servings. But what I love about making my own dressings is that I can feel better about dousing that on, right? I don't know about you, but I love lots of dressing on a salad. I don't like following the rule that it can only be 2 little teaspoons. It's not enough. It's all raw. So I make my own dressing so that I can really layer on that stuff. And you just mix that together. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now we add our toppings, green onion. Anytime you can add allium, A-L-L-I-U-M, an allium vegetable to your meal, that means garlic, that means any type of onion family, those shallots, those will help with inflammatory response, aka blood sugar response. And blood sugar response, a high one, is an inflammatory response. Any of those alliums have really powerful nutrients that help our immune system to function really well. So I add those on top, and then I'm going to add the crunch. This is a Thai crunch salad. We need the crunch. So instead of caramelized nuts and those little wonton things, we are going to add, your recipe calls for crunched peanuts. I didn't have any, so I'm using hemp seed and pepitas, aka pumpkin seeds. They're going to add a ton of crunch, a ton of flavor. They're also adding anti-inflammatory omega-3s, and research shows that the more omega-3s you have, typically the lower your blood sugar response is. So we have protein, fat, and fiber from that little bowl of nuts and seeds, and that's giving me my crunch. If you're someone who wants a really powerful flavor crunch from those, you could also roast your seeds and nuts, your hemp seed and your pepitas, over the stove in a tiniest little bit of sesame oil, and that's going to give you a lot of flavor and pow. And if you need to add more, let's say you're new to cooking this kind of stuff yourself, you try it and you're like, it's a little bland, I wish it were crunchier. I'd rather you add double or even triple the serving of nuts here than go out to eat and have the Thai crunch salad somewhere else that's going to give you a huge blood sugar spike. So please pay attention to how these things are feeling and tasting and make modifications. If you have to add more dressing or add more crunchy things, or maybe you don't like cabbage, so you're only using some butter leaf lettuce to start, as long as we're looking at protein, fat, fiber, acid in that like combination, you're going to be helping to control your blood sugar. So look at that delicious salad. And that's going to be my lunch when we're all done teaching. I'm coming back for you. Easy, easy, easy. That one is one of my favorites because it's so modifiable. I can add whatever protein we had for dinner last night. Honestly, I could throw any vegetable I want in there, whether it's cooked or raw, and that dressing kind of all pulls it together. So that's our first recipe, done and done. And move some of this stuff out of our way. So the next quick thing we're going to do, and I'm going to come back to the fact that that didn't have a lot of carbs. I'm coming back to that. The next quick thing we're going to do, if you change your recipe to quick pickled cucumbers. This I like to actually add to my salad over there. But I typically like to have some sort of jar of quick pickled something in the refrigerator at all times. And the reason for that is that acid profile. We are going to pickle these cucumbers in vinegar so that cucumber now has a lot of acid in it to improve our digestion. So we're getting fiber from the cucumber, but we're also getting acid along with it that all improves our blood sugar response. Plus, if you're someone who has maybe some IBS, you kind of don't do really well with raw vegetables, pickling them is a really great way to eat them because they soften up and your body doesn't have to work so hard to digest it. So you can honestly do this recipe with any vegetable you want. Thinly sliced carrot, thinly sliced radish, they're all good. I'm going to go with cucumbers today. So I have one full cucumber thinly sliced in a jar. I have half a cup of water. I'm going to do half a cup of apple cider vinegar. So for those of you who have seen on the internet that apple cider vinegar helps with blood sugar response, it's true. They're not lying. Now, is it the be all end all? Can you take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before your meal and suddenly you have no blood sugar problems ever? No, we need to look at balance. We need to be looking at that whole complete picture of protein and fat and fiber. But that acid in apple cider vinegar is really, really beneficial for blood sugar control and blood sugar balance. So you could take a shot, before you have a meal. You could also incorporate it into other foods that you're eating. So I have my half cup. I also have a teaspoon each of sea salt and of regular sugar. For those of you who have come to other classes with me, you'll know that I don't typically use regular sugar. So you might be thinking, should I use coconut sugar instead? It's lower glycemic. Not in this recipe. We want the regular sugar in there to kind of do the whole pickling process. You kind of need regular sugar for that. I'm also going to do a teaspoon of peppercorns, whole peppercorns, not ground pepper. We want that flavor to be imparted. So back to the sugar piece of things. I have regular sugar in my kitchen pretty much exclusively for pickling and for my hummingbird feeder. Other than that, I don't really use regular sugar ever because there's so many other alternatives like coconut sugar to bake with, like raw honey, like date nectar, that I don't really ever feel the need for regular sugar in food items, but you definitely do need it for pickling. So stir it up. Depending on the recipe you're looking at, you might find that they'll ask you to actually heat this first so that everything dissolves. Yeah, you're going to get it better dissolved if you heat it first, but it dissolves enough, in my opinion, for a quick pickle to just stir it up until you don't really see the sugar and the salt in there anymore. And you pour it on in. So the key to this is to make sure, let's get that out of your way, that everything is submerged in the liquid. So you got to kind of like push those cucumbers down, really squish them in. And if you have to, if after you squish them in, they're still not fully submerged, you may need to just add like a little splash more of vinegar and water. Like I might need to. It's just not quite making it. So if we were really, really pickling, what we would do is we would actually keep this out at room temperature for sometimes a week or more and let that fermentation process start so that you start getting probiotic bacteria. This is called a quick pickle because we're not starting any bacterial process at all because we're going to refrigerate this. All we're doing is softening up the fiber and adding that acid and those flavors to the pickle to start kind of breaking it down, to the cucumber to start breaking it down. So that's the difference between a quick pickle and a regular pickle, is that you actually aren't going to get a probiotic effect from this, but you will get a sweet and salty flavor. You're going to get a broken down fiber that's easier to digest. You're going to get the acid that enhances digestion as well and then helps with blood sugar management. So you put this in the fridge for at least 2 hours before you eat it, and this will hang out for 2 to 3 weeks in your fridge, no problem. So I actually already have some that I'm like almost to the very, very bottom of my jar. I'm going to add that to my salad before I eat it. And then I'll put this in here and this will be our next batch. These just add them in for a little bit of flavor and for that acid effect, like 3, 4, 5 slices is all you really need. I sometimes will use this as my sole vegetable. We do a dish in our house where we cook up rice and meatballs and pickled cucumbers. And it is like the easiest dish you've ever made. The kids love it. My husband loves it. And it's just so easy because my pickled cucumbers are already done and we have a big side of that. That's like the vegetable side with our rice, with our meatball. And it's a really well blood sugar balanced dish right there. So it's just nice to kind of have this around. So I'll put that in my fridge after class. Quick pickled cucumbers. Also, your recipe does call for dill. You can put any herb in you want, and you can just mess with flavors too. So I didn't have any dill on hand. I just didn't throw it in there, but you could throw whole cloves of garlic in. You could put cilantro in there, however you want to mess with the flavor. So you remember I pointed out there isn't any carb in this salad. So you might be wondering, can I eat this? Is this a fully balanced meal without the carb? So the answer is yes and no, depending on who you are. It could absolutely be a complete meal if you're already used to running on a fairly low carb diet because it has so much fat and protein in it, it's totally fine. But if you're someone who typically does eat more carbs, if you're on any sort of insulin medication at all, some people just typically need more carbs. Maybe you're an athlete and so you're burning on more fuel. You'll need to add something to this to up the carb a little bit more than just what you're going to get from those cooked carrots. So easy. You could have a handful of chips. You could have a tortilla on the side. You could have a piece of fruit. I like to add dessert. I like to have carbs by having dessert right after my salad, and that way I have salad and dessert for my lunch. And we're going to do that now. So we're going to make our dessert, our very high protein, slightly modified carb dessert by using cottage cheese. And if you're on our newsletter at all, if you've gone to our Vimeo page, vimeo.com/St. Jude Wellness, you'll see that I do a lot with cottage cheese. It's one of my favorite ingredients because it's so high in protein and it's very low in lactose. So a lot of us who are slightly more lactose intolerant can actually handle it. And it blends. And so you don't have to eat the curds of it and you can just do so much with it. It's really, really versatile. I like this brand and another one. This one's Nancy's. The other brand that I like is called Good Culture. They're both fermented cottage cheeses, which means you're getting a probiotic effect. So essentially you're getting that awesome yogurt effect of having probiotics, which is going to help your gut and then help your blood sugar. The healthier our gut is, the healthier our blood sugar is. So anytime you find a dairy product, I'd like it to be fermented or say it's a good source of probiotic. This recipe, you can use low fat. I kind of like full fat better as a texture. It's a bit creamier because we're going to make it into like a cheesecake filling. So this recipe is called Berry Cottage Cheesecake. And think of it as a cheesecake filling, more like a parfait than a cheesecake. We're not making a whole cheesecake right now, just to give that away. So we're going to put a whole cup of cottage cheese into the blender. This is another one of those recipes that's really easy to double or triple. So if you're wanting to make this for a couple of days, maybe you want to make enough so that you have dessert 5 days of the week at your lunch break, or you're making it for several people at home, you could easily do that. You might just need to put it in your bigger food processor instead of the individual guy. And again, I'm just eyeballing it right now. That looks like about a cup. So just for your knowledge, 1/2 cup of cottage cheese has 14 grams of protein in 1/2 cup. Our goal for a snack is 10 to 15 grams. Our goal for a meal is 20 to 30 grams of protein. Most of us are not meeting that. And so let's say you have that bagel with a cup of coffee with creamer in it, carb, 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 carb. Even if you have an egg on the side, that's only 7 or 8 grams. You're not even close to that 20 to 30 for a meal. You're actually not even really that close to 15 for a snack. So if you could instead put 1/2 cup of cottage cheese on that bagel, and then maybe even have an egg on the side, now you have at least 15 grams just from the cottage cheese. Now maybe we add that 7 or 8 from the egg, and we have our bagel. You see how you can just modify that one meal? You don't have to ditch bagels. How can we balance it out so you're not getting quite a blood sugar spike? So that's what I love about cottage cheese. We're going to add some sweetener. Again, if you've cooked with me before, you know I don't often use a lot of honey. I really do prefer date syrup or coconut nectar or coconut sugar, just because they're lower glycemic, but they have a dark color to them. So making cheesecake, I don't really want my cheesecake filling to look brown. That's not appetizing. So we're using raw honey instead. And all we're adding, hold on a second. Let me get that off there. All we're going to add is 2 tablespoons. So this recipe serves two servings. So in 1 serving, that means I'm having about 1 tablespoon, which 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. Okay, so if we're doing all the math, for women, our recommended added sugar intake is, well, for men and women, 6 to 9 teaspoons per day. So I'm getting 3 here in my dessert. So that's 1/2 to 1/3 of my daily added sugar intake, versus if I were to have a regular cheesecake, that might be closer to like 15 or 16 teaspoons, right? So yes, we're adding sugar. We're adding a real sugar. We're adding honey to this, but it's still going to end up being very low glycemic. I'm not even close to my total added sugar for the day, and I'm balancing out this sugar with tons and tons of protein, and you'll see in a minute also with some fat, well, fat with their cottage cheese as well. So I'm balancing out the spike I'm going to get from that added sugar anyway. So please don't be afraid of sugar or added sugars, especially if you are cooking yourself, where you can control the volume and balance it out with protein and or fat. Okay. We're also going to add a little bit of vanilla, about a splash, which is usually, if you were to measure a splash, it's like 1/2 teaspoon. And have fun with extracts. You could add like almond extract or lemon extract. You could add cocoa powder and some peppermint extract and do this at the holidays and make like a chocolate cheesecake. There's a lot you can do with just flavors. So that's it. Just those 3 ingredients. We're going to blend. Hang on, it's going to be loud for a second. So the inspiration for this recipe, actually, again, go to our Vimeo page or just go to our website and click the video tab, stjudewellnesscenter.org video tab, and click the cottage cheese cookie dough recipe. So that is where this inspiration came from, is I was making this recipe for cottage cheese cookie dough. And this is the first step of it. And then you add in all these other things to make it cookie dough. But I made that first step and I took a bite and I was like, this tastes just like cheesecake filling. And so why can't we just stop here and make it cheesecake filling? That's what we're going to do. So get all that goodness off. So cottage cheese does have some carb in it. It's 3 grams, not very much at all. But we have carb from our sugar, and we're going to put some fruit on too. So this is going to end up being about a full serving of carbohydrate to pair with our salad. So just for those of you who count carbs, you can kind of have that in your head. If we're having salad, which that salad is probably 1/2 serving of carbs, maybe. And then a full serving here. So it's still a lower carb meal when we have the dessert with the salad. But you're getting some carbohydrate there. So we're gonna look at that. Doesn't that look like cheesecake filling? Like it's nice and thick, and I wish you were in here because it smells like it too. So I'm gonna do kind of a parfait vibe on this, but you could easily instead of making it a parfait, you could do like maybe you take 1 graham cracker and you crumble it along the bottom. Or you can even Google different types of like paleo crusts where you actually grind up nuts with a little bit of coconut oil and you like press it into a pan. So good. And then add this on top of it and you have like an actual cheesecake. You'd have to double or triple the recipe, obviously. But there's a lot you can do with this. I am just going to top it with some strawberries. Berries are one of our lower glycemic fruits. All of them are. Make it beautiful. And then I'm just going to top it with some nuts. So now I'm adding fat and omega-3s from some crunched up walnuts. But again, maybe you have a granola you love. Even if it is a high sugar granola, if you just add a tablespoon, it would add so much to this because you're also getting sweetener from the base that you don't have to have these huge amounts of this other sweet, crunchy thing on top. Like I said, even a graham cracker that's higher in carb. But you're balancing it out with this lower glycemic base so that you have those things you love and those indulgences without having to truly spike your blood sugar. But this by itself, I mean, it's so good. And let me see if I can sort of tip it for you. See how cute that is? And it's so pretty. So what I will do oftentimes is I'll actually put the rest of it in a jar and I bring that with some crunched up nuts or graham cracker with some fruit and I put it in my fridge in the office. And then I have this instant yummy dessert that's way better than anything I could buy anywhere close down the street. So here's what I'm having for lunch today. Thai crunch salad and a little parfait with my pickled cucumbers on the side. So those were the original recipes that I was going to show you. How are we on time? Okay, perfect. I kind of ran through them because I wanted to be able to show you the bonus recipes. We get bonus. All right. I'm going to try and decide. I think we'll do the drink first. We're going to do a mocktail. Because alcohol spikes our blood sugar. I don't care what you have to say about it. I love wine and I'm not telling you to stop drinking it, but it is not good for us. No matter which way you look at it, alcohol is a toxin. It is not good for our inflammation. And even pretty much aside from something like tequila, like a straight liquor, you're going to have a blood sugar spike from your alcohol. So looking for ways that we can maybe have a mocktail instead of a cocktail sometimes to have just a lower sugar response. The problem is mocktails have become really popular. A lot of people these days are going, alcohol free. But mocktails are just packed with sugar. I mean, they are like crazy. So yeah, you've ditched the alcohol, but now we have these super fruity, fluffy things that your blood sugar is going through the roof. So it's really important that you take away labels, things that, oh, it's mocktail, therefore it's healthy. No, we have to look a little bit deeper and look at ingredients. So let's make one ourselves. This is one that I have been making almost every single night this week while I cook dinner because it just makes me feel fun. So you have your favorite tea, your favorite berry or hibiscus iced tea. I like this brand. I don't know how well you can see that. It's called Pique, Pique. They have tea, they turn their tea into crystals instead of dry leaves so that you can add hot or cold water to them. And I love that. So this is their hibiscus tea blend. And I'm going to add cold water, just regular water. Always put your mocktail in a fun glass. Always. So I didn't fill it up all the way, because I like to fill it up a little bit to get the crystals starting to dissolve, but then I'm going to add my mint leaves and add as many as you want. Like just go crazy with the mint. Mint is an herb, so it's actually really good for us and it's really anti-inflammatory. And mint can help with reflux and digestion, which again helps with our blood sugar if we're not having digestive issues. So then I kind of take my straw and I just dip those around. You could get real fancy if you're a bartender and you can muddle them, but honestly, if you just kind of like press them around with the back of a spoon or a straw, you're good. Next, I'm going to, did I ever use the other side of my lime? I didn't. I'm going to use my other already cut lime. You could do lemon, you could do lime. I already have a lime, so that's what I'm going to use. And this is where you get to have some fun. You can add more water. You could add sparkling water and jazz it up. I'm just going to add regular water, along with some ice cubes. So give me a second. That was the one thing I couldn't have sitting out, or I would have just had water. And now we're going to add the trick. The secret ingredient to any good mocktail is a bitter. So I have a friend who makes bitters, but you can find bitters at the regular store. This is her lime bitter, and like 8 to 10 little sprinkles of bitter. Plus, the nutrition benefit of a bitter is it helps with digestion. So if you add bitters to your drinks, it helps you digest your food after you have that drink. So it's kind of got this bonus yummy flavor / nutrition effect. And always add a garnish. And this is just so tasty. It's really fun. And it actually gives some nutrition benefit as well. So you're not getting a big blood sugar spike. So good. So good. So last recipe I want to show you, I'm not actually going to cook because it makes me step over to the stove too much, and it's not really fun to see me just stir, but I'm going to walk you through the ingredients of it. So the very first recipe was our bonus, and it's cauliflower sushi rice. So pull that one out. And this is what you will do with this. Sushi rice, for those of you who love sushi, is one of the highest sugar rices you can get, because it actually does have sugar added to it, and it's a totally refined white rice, so it has no fiber. So how can we make that lower glycemic? And the way we're going to do it is actually we're going to replace it with cauliflower rice. So here is where I hesitate to give alternatives, because this is a cool thing you can do for blood sugar management, is use some of these faux carbs or carb replacements, where we're replacing rice with cauliflower rice. So the same idea as zoodles, right? Using zucchini as noodles. They can taste great. They can really enhance the meal, and man, oh man, can they help you with your blood sugar management. If you're struggling with that, if you're trying to go more keto, the trouble with it, and the reason I often hesitate to show a faux carb, is because I don't want you to think you can't eat regular rice and still have blood sugar control. You can. If you're like, ugh, cauliflower rice, no thank you, or this process is too long, that is why I give you all of these other ideas. That is why you can add acid and protein and fat and fiber to regular old white rice, and you can still have a balanced meal. You have to play with portion a little bit. So please know that I'm going to show you this because it's fun and it tastes great and it's a cool thing to try, but that doesn't mean you can't just make some sushi rice. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to take my cauliflower rice when I do this, and I'm going to heat it in my pot. Boop, boop. So by the way, I buy pre-riced cauliflower because nobody has time to sit there and grate an entire head of cauliflower, but this is about the size of an entire head of cauliflower. I'm going to add some avocado oil or olive oil or coconut oil. Boop, boop, boop. Add all of my riced cauliflower. I'm going to stir until it starts to soften. 3 to 5 minutes, depending on kind of the size of your pot and how hot it gets. So you stir. Then you're going to take gelatin. That is the key to making it sticky into sushi rice. So you're going to get some gelatin. The bonus of gelatin from a nutrition perspective is that it actually helps heal the gut lining. It's really good for healing. So it can help with our blood sugar management by healing the gut and not letting things get absorbed where they should. So I have to always remind myself how much of the gelatin. 2 teaspoons of gelatin. You sprinkle that on with some sea salt, a teaspoon or so. Stir. Then you add apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. You're adding now acid also. Okay. Stir. And then once it starts to get really, really hot and soft, you're going to add coconut milk. So now we're adding fat too. But this is all what kind of makes it creamy and sticky like sushi rice should be. So you're going to add about 2/3-ish cup of coconut milk. Stir, bring to a boil, and then you just let it simmer while kind of constantly stirring until the coconut milk completely evaporates. So when you know it's done, when you're stirring and you can kind of open up a hole in it and you don't see any liquid at the bottom. That's when it's done. turn it off, take it off the heat, and you kind of just pat it down, flatten it out, let it cool, and then put it in your refrigerator. So I'm actually going to do this after class. Again, it's just, it would be annoying for you to watch me do that for 10 minutes. It takes about 10 minutes total. I'm going to do this, let it cool. I'm going to put it in my fridge, and we're going to have this for dinner tonight in a poke style bowl. So I have salmon that I got out. We're going to have our sushi cauliflower rice with some greens and some cooked salmon, because I have little kids, so they don't want a whole lot of raw fish. It's not going to be truly pokey. But some cooked salmon, we're going to have green onions on it, some furikake, maybe some tomatoes. And I usually make one of those creamy pokey sauces by just adding hot sauce to plain yogurt, and we drizzle that over the top. So that's what we're having for dinner tonight. But the key is the gelatin, the coconut milk, and the chilling in the refrigerator for a couple of hours to really get that stickiness. Otherwise, it's just kind of like creamy, gloopy cauliflower rice. So you have that recipe. I would love to know if you're going to try it. It is really good. We don't do this every time. Sometimes I make poke bowls and I just make it with regular rice, like I said, and I make sure that I don't have more than about 1/3 to 1/2 cup of rice in my bowl, that we have lots of fiber on the side of it, enough protein on the side of it. And maybe we also add, some vinegar or lime juice, and we go for a walk afterward. These are all ways you can control your blood sugar without having to always have cauliflower rice. So we made it through. Let me take a sip of my mocktail, and then I'm going to go look at all your questions. So add them into the Q&A box. Okay, there was one early on. What are your thoughts about intermittent fasting? And then I'm going to scroll back down. Okay, intermittent fasting. So I'm going to just relate to today's topic of blood sugar management, and because that's a very big umbrella question. Intermittent fasting, depending on how you do it, can be super duper beneficial. I find that a lot of people don't do it correctly, or their body is not in the right place to do it. So here's some very brief background. Intermittent fasting is a stressor on your body, but it's something called a hormetic stressor. So it's actually one of those stressors that can be beneficial, like exercise, right? When we exercise, we actually break down our muscle, that we are stressing ourselves, but we're doing it at a low level and for a short amount of time. And then assuming that you eat enough protein and you recover afterward, you're actually then rebuilding. So that's called a hormetic stressor, when we stress our body for a benefit. That's what intermittent fasting can do. If you do it correctly, it can be a hormetic stressor, and it can actually help to reinvigorate the gut. It helps control blood sugar management. The problem is if you do it for too long, so if you're doing like multiple days in a row, maybe too long of a window, or during your eating window, you are not eating correctly, not meeting your nutrient needs, that's where it can be detrimental. The flip side of that is if you are in a very heightened stressful state to begin with, let's say you have chronic inflammation, you're really not sleeping well, you're in a stressful state of life, you're recovering from a surgery, something like that, where you're already stressed, adding a stressor is not going to do any good. So sometimes it's just a matter of your stage of life that intermittent fasting might really benefit you and your blood sugars, but maybe not right now. Maybe 2 months from now or next year. And again, it's intermittent. It's not supposed to be forever. So the best way of doing it is a long overnight extended fast, anywhere from 12 to 16 hours overnight, and then making sure you eat your nutrient needs in that window. I find a lot of people do intermittent fasting, and then during the eating window, they're just like, well, I fasted, so I can eat whatever I want. You still want to watch blood sugar control. You want to eat real foods, be reading labels, all of that. So kind of a quick and dirty response to that. I do have a whole webinar recorded on our Vimeo page specifically on fasting. And I am going to be offering that topic again as an update in October. I think that's scheduled for October. So if you're not on our newsletter, stjude.wellnesscenter.org, sign up for the newsletter. You can find the date of when I'm talking about intermittent fasting again. Next question, is high C-reactive protein an indicator of inflammation as it relates to gluten and sugar? So C-reactive protein, or CRP, is one of the lab measures that you can get that does in fact signify inflammation in your body. Is it specifically gluten and sugar? No. CRP can be elevated after you have surgery, for instance, because you have inflammation going on. So if your blood sugars are consistently out of balance, that can be inflammatory and can increase your CRP. But they're not necessarily like one and the same. You could have high CRP and it have nothing to do with blood sugars, but yes, that they could be correlated potentially. What are your thoughts on PB2? PB2, powdered peanut butter protein. I have to be honest, they have reformulated their product, so I have to go back and look at it. 3 years ago, their PB2 had palm oil in it, and I believe sugar also. The concept is great. The concept of powdered peanut butter is awesome because you're getting rid of all the fat from the peanut butter and it's strictly just the protein. Like it's essentially protein powder made from peanuts. So for those of you who need to really watch your fat intake, who are trying to lose weight by looking at calories, it can be a really great thing. I love it from an introducing solids perspective for my kids because it introduces the allergen of peanuts in an easy way to stir in. But a lot of the powdered peanut butters have sugar and or oil added in, just like nut butters. So as long as you read the ingredients and it's just peanuts in that ingredient list, that's the key. I can show you which one I have. Hold on a second. I don't remember the brand off the top of my head. This is why I love teaching from home. I can show you all my things. All right, I got this on Amazon. It's NorCal Organic. I know the light is on that, but it's NorCal Organic from Amazon. If I go to the ingredients, peanuts, just peanuts, organic peanuts. So really great. And I mean, it's 11 grams of protein per 2 scoops. So that's a pretty good amount for just peanuts. And you could absolutely make the peanut sauce with that powder, by the way, leading back to our class. You would just have to reconstitute it with more water. Can taking a shot of apple cider vinegar burn the fragile mucous membranes in the throat? Yes, you have to be careful with apple cider vinegar. I recommend doing a shot into a full glass of water and then drinking that because the water will dilute it and help it to be more manageable. Some people just take a straight shot. I don't love that idea. It's just like taking a straight shot of, lemon juice. Will it cause damage? Potentially if you do it every day for a really long time, maybe. So my thought is always just to dilute it. And that way you're not exposing anything, even your gut system, to just straight acid. I didn't receive the recipe. So anyone who was registered today, I have that whole list of emails. I will send all the recipes and the recording, and I'll post this recording on our website as well. I missed the beginning due to difficulties. Can you please repeat a list of items that help lower the blood sugar response? Oh, and you said sorry, don't worry about it. Technical difficulties happen all the time. So the main things for blood sugar are protein, fat, fiber, and acid. I feel like, what was that? Who was that lady that had that show on Amazon? It was like fat, sugar, salt, and acid and heat, or whatever that was. I feel like that. But protein, fat, and fiber slow down the process of digestion and absorption, so it slows that spike. And acid helps to essentially digest the food better so that you're not absorbing it as quickly either. Another thing on the backside of eating is movement. If you can just move for 10 minutes after you have carbs, it's amazing how quickly that can bring your blood sugar down. I've been playing with a continuous glucose monitor, and just for fun, I ate this big bowl of pasta, like just pasta with sauce, just to see how much it would spike. And my blood sugar went through the roof. So then I went for a walk with my kids. My kids are 1 and 3 years old. So we did not go for a fast walk. We were strolling for about 15 minutes. And it was almost back down to normal by the time we got back in 15 to 20 minutes. So movement is so, so critical for also balancing blood sugars. Speaking of continuous glucose monitor, just to put a plug in, I am releasing that program to the public probably in the new year. I'm going to give it to just some employees to test out in the fall. And then in the new year, I'll have that released. So again, be on our newsletter through the website and you can know when that program is out and about if you're interested in glucose monitoring. Can you ferment hothouse cucumbers from Costco? Absolutely. I've heard that dairy causes breast and prostate cancer from the pregnant cow's high estrogen, even though they advertise no added hormones. Okay. There are so many things that can cause cancer. I mean, it's just everything is a carcinogen. Cooking is a carcinogen. Breathing this air is a carcinogen. Yeah, they've linked some of the hormones that are added to cows to being carcinogens. Is dairy going to directly cause cancer for anyone? No. The cancer occurrence is so multifaceted. You have to have the genetic makeup to be prone to it. You have to have been exposed to various types of other carcinogens over life. If you are dairy sensitive, that could be a bit more prone, a bit more at risk. I would never recommend anyone just stop having dairy altogether because you're going to get cancer. There's just no research around that. Now, are there better quality dairies? Absolutely. Should you be leaning on grass-fed, pasture-raised milk and dairy products? Yep, because that's a healthier cow. So anytime you have a healthier animal, you're going to lower your risk of any conditions, cancer or not, by eating a healthier food product. So, it's a tough one. There's no way to say, yep, that's going to cause cancer. You can't say that. I love your presentation and ambiance. Thank you. I love my ambiance too. We worked a lot on this kitchen. Okay. I love let's see, how are we doing on time? It's 1 o'clock. I realize that a lot of people got to go. If you got to sign off, it's fine. I'm going to get through these questions. So know that I'm going to keep recording this with the answer to questions, and I'll probably cut us off in about 5 minutes, and anything I couldn't get to, I will type answers in an email. So just know that if you got to go, I understand. All right. How about half rice, half cauliflower rice? So you could totally do that. I've never tried it with this recipe, so I don't know how that would come out, because if you use just dry rice, it's not going to have quite enough time to cook. Rice takes longer than the 10 minutes the cauliflower rice takes. But you could do this and then make white rice and mix it together. That would totally work. I'm sure there's a recipe out there for combining it. Adding oil causes our blood to have thicker viscosity, and we should have our fat from whole food. So the question was, we should have our fats from whole foods because adding oil makes our blood thicker. A little bit of that is true. So definitely we want to lean on whole food fats way more than added fats like oils. But that's true for anything. I mean, I'd rather you have your sugar from a fruit than from just the sugar of that fruit. So I'd rather you eat a date than date syrup. Anytime you process a food, you're stripping it of some of the other nutrients, some of the fiber, some of its other beneficial properties, and you're just having the fat, or just having the sugar. That said, oils are somewhat essential for cooking. There are ways around it, for sure, but having a little bit and a high quality oil is not going to immediately thicken your blood. If you are eating a very whole food based diet where you're not having a lot of processed foods, but you are cooking with a high quality cold pressed, expeller pressed oil, your blood is going to be just fine. It's not like oh my gosh, you have some oil and therefore your fat is going to thicken. Usually it's this combination of stuff. Is it okay to use dehydrated herbs? Yep, absolutely. Love them. So it's just different. You're not going to get a whole lot of fiber from a dried basil versus a basil leaf. And the antioxidant profile just changes. Just like when we take a raw tomato and we turn it into tomato sauce, we get rid of some things by adding heat, but we also activate some other nutrients by adding heat. So it's the same thing with dried herbs. You're still getting a ton of nutrition from it. It's a little different than the fresh version. Still very beneficial. The only issue I ever have with dried herbs, I have two. One is that a lot of companies irradiate herbs, so you're actually just kind of killing off the antioxidants. So you want to look for herbs that either say non-irradiated or locally made herbs, preferably within your state, because when they cross boundaries, when they cross lines, oftentimes that has to happen. The other is look at the dates, the expiration dates. A lot of people have basil in their cupboard from year 2000, and then they're expired. There's no antioxidants in there anymore. So do every 6 to 12 month clean through of your herb pantry and get rid of the old stuff. This keeps getting in my way. Couple more. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Does gelatin help repair diverticulosis? It can be one of the things that does. Again, there's never like this just one thing that's going to do it, but gelatin does help to heal the gut lining. Gelatin, collagen, aloe, these are all things, chia gel, these are all things that help to heal your gut lining. And so if you have diverticulosis, that's going to help for sure. So gelatin's kind of like one of a toolbox to use. You're welcome. You're welcome. What about red wine? So I love this question because I don't know exactly what you're asking. I'm assuming you're asking me because I talked about alcohol and mocktails. Red wine is still an alcohol. Does it have some beneficial properties like antioxidant from the grape? Yeah. Does that make it a health food because it has beneficial properties? No. So, there's all these benefits that you can gain from red wine, and a lot of the Mediterranean diet. It's part of that more from the social aspect. When you're having a glass of wine with someone, you're interacting on a different level. You're often more kind of open and connecting with people. So there's this social piece of drinking that can be beneficial. And then if you're going to drink, well, red wine does have antioxidants in it. It's still an alcohol. It's still hard on the liver. You got to watch the portion. It's not something I can recommend as a health food, but I drink it sometimes too. So just kind of one of those things. Can I be a test employee for the glucose monitor program? Yes, Deb, you can. I'll tell you when I launch it for employees. And then what about beans? I'm assuming this is a blood sugar related question. Beans are a carb. They're also a protein. They also have a lot of fiber. So like most foods, other than like straight oil, almost all foods have a little bit of everything. Beans are considered a protein. They are a very good source of protein, but they are higher in carb than, let's say, chicken. So it just kind of depends on what your blood sugar management goals are. If you're riding really high in your blood sugars and you're finding you're tending to spike a lot, you might want to lean away from the higher carb proteins. But if you're vegetarian or you're not having high spikes, like beans are a great source of fiber too. It's kind of just something to keep in mind. If you're seeing your blood sugar spike with food and you're having a big portion of beans, it could be that food, even though it's healthy. Or just know, okay, I'm having beans and I tend to be really carb sensitive. Maybe I'm not going to also have a tortilla. Maybe I'm just going to do beans as my carb, or have a lower amount of beans and rice so I can have both. So it's just kind of something to keep in mind. Beans are a very healthy food, but they do have carbs in them. You're welcome. And you're welcome. I think we made it through all of them, you guys. Oh, more were added. Just thank yous. And then how can I check my blood sugar spike? So there are a couple different ways. You can prick your finger. You can go to CVS and buy a blood sugar testing kit. Prick your finger, put it in the monitor, and see what it is. That is just a one-time picture of your blood sugar. So I love continuous glucose monitors because you plug it in for 10 days into your arm and it shows you on an app 24 hours of data of what your blood sugars are doing. They're a little pricey. If you have prediabetes or diabetes, you can get them covered by insurance. If not, they're about $200. But they are really cool data, and that's the program I'm launching soon in several months, is how to use that data if you don't have diabetes. You just want to kind of know what your blood sugars are and use that moving forward. So that'll be that program. But those are two ways you can test it. You can also get your blood sugar tested through the doctor's office and get a lab. But again, that's kind of just that one-time test. And A1C is a 3-month average. So that's a good indicator as well. So, all right, we did it. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for coming a week later. I appreciate all of you being here because I know you had planned on last week. Like I said, email to be sent out probably tomorrow, but I'll see if I can get to it this afternoon with the recipes and this recording, and the recording will be posted on stjudewellnesscenter.org. Sign up for our newsletter so you can jump in on more of these. The next virtual one I have will be in November. We'll be doing holiday stuff, but we have some in-person cooking classes with Lisa, our other dietitian, already going on. All right, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining. I'll see you all later.